Hey everyone, welcome to the Story Builder podcast. I am thrilled to be with Flint Maxwell. He's an author here in Northeast Ohio, and he lives there with his beautiful wife and daughter and son and their four furry best friends. Flint, thanks so much for chatting with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
All of that, wow, I feel
Yes.
special.
Yes.
Now, Flint, you've been writing for a really long time, and you've written
Yep.
so many books that I lost track looking at Amazon, trying to figure out like what is the grand total of how many novels you've written. And I don't know. I'm guessing like 50, 60.
I don't think it's that much, but it's a lot. I honestly don't have the number off the top of my head. And there's a lot of stuff that I've written and published and then unpublished that still kind of shows up in the search results, but you can't actually get it, kind of deal.
Mhm.
I would say it's less than 35.
Less than 35.
Yes, maybe 40, but less than
Okay.
35 is my guess.
Okay. I feel like this is kind of like dog years because it feels like a bigger number than it actually is. If
Like
you're
when I say 35, that seems like a lot. Like,
It does, but I mean, when you say that many, in my mind, it feels like 70.
yeah, I mean, me too, because because the actual writing is not always easy and all that. But I, I, it's, I don't even, yeah, I'd say less than 35. I'm standing on that one.
You're very humble, unlike most writers, so
Oh,
that's pretty
thank you.
incredible. Now, let's talk for a minute about your books, though. Most recent book that you released is A Cabin of Nowhere, right? And now, do you call it A Cabin of Nowhere Dandelion, or is it just A Cabin of Nowhere?
It's The Cabin of
Sorry,
Nowhere, and then
okay.
the subtitle's Dandelion because it's kind of like a story within a story type book, and like the biggest part of that book is the Dandelion part.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that book. Like what's going on behind the scenes here? A little sneak peek behind the curtain here. Tell me a little bit more about that. What was the inspiration for it? What was the process like writing that book?
Well, the inspiration came mostly from just my love of like the Twilight Zone and Goosebumps and Creepshow and just like the anthology format. And I remember I was sick or something. I'm always getting sick with the kids, and
Mhm. For
uh,
sure.
so I'm laid up in bed and I just watched like a bunch of Twilight Zone episodes and I was like, man, how cool would it be if there was like, you know, Rod Serling introduces it and then you get the story
Mhm.
and then it just kind of ends, but there's like no continuous thread through the introduction part. And I thought to myself, that'd be kind of cool to do like, a fictional introduction type thing. And, they read these stories within their story and then it starts affecting them. Like the story they're reading starts affecting them, like in their, fictional real time, I guess.
Mhm.
And the process to write that was refreshing because I felt like a lot more free on how I would write the book, I guess, because like the introduction part is written third person, and then the dandelion story is like first person, like almost like a journal, not like strictly journal, but it like reads like it's somebody's journal. And that was really fun to do that. You know, kind of like it was like writing two stories at once in a way. So like the writing, the first drafting was fun, but then the editing sucks always. The editing always sucks. But so yeah, that's yeah, just so Goosebumps. I loved Goosebumps as a kid. Twilight Zone. I love the movie Creepshow. The show's pretty good, but I like the movie a lot, and I wanted to do something like that. It's something I hadn't done before in my 70,000 books I've written. Right?
70,000, that's
Yeah,
even better now.
yeah.
So, different format, kind of shaking things up a bit, trying something new. I love that you're inspired by the Twilight Zone. I think don't you think that's always the case though? It's like, well, what are you seeing? What are you reading?
Hmm.
What
Definitely.
conversations are you having?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just yeah, Twilight Zone was a big thing, and then I feel like naturally I always revert back to like a first person uh narrator, and I've done so many of those books that like it just feels natural. So like writing the book, I wrote it really fast. It's
Mhm.
I think the first draft was like a little over 50,000 and it ended up being I don't know, like 42,000 or something like that. But I wrote like 50,000 words in like 2 weeks. It was about 2 weeks to get that first draft done, and then the editing takes another 2 months or whatever it was. Uh, but yeah, so that's how it went.
So I remember when you wrote that, it was really, really fast. Like I was shocked. You're like, yeah, by the way, I wrote a book. I'm like, what? And it was I think it was even less than 2 weeks. I think when inspiration strikes
Yeah.
with you, just having known you now for a few years, I feel like inspiration is a big part of it. Like you're feeling it or you're not feeling it when you're writing.
Yes, me personally, that's definitely the case, and it didn't used to be like that. Um, I would pretty much just I'd get an idea and I would just roll with it, and I don't know. I've just slowed down in my old age, and having the kids make having two little kids running around the house makes writing harder than it already is. And but yeah, this one was kind of a it was kind of an anomaly, especially since I've had my daughter to write something that fast. But like with the snow, I remember I wrote the snow right when my first kid was born, and my wife took the baby out to go see family, and I had the whole house to myself, and peace and quiet, and I just sat at the dining room table and I wrote like 10,000 words on the snow. And it was just one of those things where like it was like I was inspired, like I wanted to do like a snow apocalypse book, and I just and that that's like a quarter of that book's not very long. That was like a quarter of the book in one day. It was so, and like in that first 10,000 words, I figured out so much on the story just by writing it, just like who the characters were, what they sounded like, not necessarily like where the whole series was going because it ended up being a 5 book series, but for the most part, that first 10,000 words was like crucial into how it ended up being, which again is not normal for me. I'm more like a 2,000 word a day kind of guy,
Right.
3,000 if I can swing it. But yeah, when inspiration strikes, it's nice.
You mentioned the snow being a series, having that larger scope, being like 5 books in all. How does that look for you when you're like, okay, inspiration, start writing? At what point are you kind of like, oh, well, this is a series, or are you just kind of like, oh, this is a one-off?
It varies depending of my published works. It varies. With the snow, I wrote that and published it, and I didn't expect much from it, and it was doing really well. And I kept getting messages and reviews saying like, "Oh, I can't wait for the next one." I was like, "Oh, I don't have a next one in mind." Like, like it was open ended enough to where like, yeah, it made sense, but it wasn't my intention with the snow to do a series. But I was like, it wasn't like a strict no or like a solid no. It was like I just didn't think people were gonna like respond to it the way they did, and then you get a set of characters that you like, and you just kind of keep, especially in that genre, like the post-apocalyptic, supernatural type of stuff, like where you can just make it up, like you don't have to like you don't have to like go ride along with a cop or whatever to learn like how to arrest somebody, and there's like and it's a story world where like it's snowing in the summer and there's these creatures in the snow. It's like you can kind of
dream
go
it
off
up.
on tangents. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun, and I'm very grateful that people liked it the way they did. So
That's awesome. I have to read the first line to The Snow because I think this first line, I think you hit a grand slam home run because it's like, talk about hooking someone and pulling them in. On a scorching hot July afternoon, a lone snowflake fell from the summer sky. And I think the key on this is the lone snowflake. It's like the imagery of that. We've all seen that.
yeah,
It's just, you're like, oh, whoa. And the reader's just, whoa, what? Huh?
yeah,
And you got us from that opening line. And
yeah. Well, thank you. That
it's
was
awesome
that was
having
my
that hook.
intention, definitely.
It worked.
Yeah, I wanted to like kind of I really well setting the tone early is very important, especially in I feel like in horror it's very important. Like you have to, because a lot of horror I've noticed in movies and books it's like slow burn. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you don't want to exhaust all the horror really fast. But
Mhm.
so like you'll see things in movies or books where like you'll get a glimpse of the supernatural or the monster or whatever is
Mhm.
gonna terrorize your protagonist, and
Mhm.
it like hooks you enough to where you're still there, you're along for the ride for like the slower character building moments, or because like the snow, it starts with that lone snowflake, and then really nothing like crazy with the snow happens until I don't know, almost a quarter of the way in the book, because it's a group of friends going to a cabin for a Fourth of July getaway type thing, and the main character, he has some repressed trauma issues, and he's like, he thinks this will be good for him, get out, get off,
Mhm.
get away from home. And so there's a lot of like character building in those early chapters that if I didn't hook you from the beginning, I would probably have a lot worse reviews, right? Like people would be
Right.
like, oh, this is so boring, nothing happened, blah blah blah.
Right. It's all exposition or
Yeah,
character,
yeah.
yeah, laying down stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, I was going
Yeah.
for something like that. Like, I don't know, what's like the 1984 first line, like on like like a warm spring day, the clock struck 13 or something.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that
where
sounds right.
and that's just like it's just like off enough to where you're like, whoa, what the heck's going on? Like I need to
Just a
read.
little off
Yeah,
kilter.
yeah, but it's not in your face like, oh, the killer clown came out and slit the girl's face off,
Yeah.
like or whatever. So yeah, that was
Uh,
my intention. So thank you for noticing that. I hope
no,
other people notice that.
I reviewed that one and I was rereading it. I was like, oh my gosh, that opening line. And that matters to set the tone, especially in horror. Now, I know a lot of horror writers, and I know you're a huge Stephen King fan, like
I am.
the biggest Stephen King fan I know. But like
Thank you.
King, he writes crime novels. He writes, The Green Mile. He writes a lot of different genres, and he kind of. I think one time you said you're like King is his own genre. He kind of does whatever he wants, and
I mean, you walk into any
people read.
bookstore, it's just they have multiple King shelves. Like it's in horror, but it's all King. Like they could literally put up a King aisle, and I mean, good, yeah, more power to him. Honestly, that's just awesome.
The switching genres, though, I think that's kind of a scary thing for most writers. And I just wanted to get your input on that, like switching genres, going from horror to fantasy or horror to, I don't know, there's so many genres. It's like it gets blurry quick too, right?
Yeah, so I it is hard. I've tried it before. I wrote some sci-fi stuff under a
Mhm.
different name, and I thought, my following from the horror novels, I thought it would carry over a little bit. And I wasn't like secretive about it. I told my Facebook page, my email list, and I got some crossover, but I didn't get as much as I thought. So like those books never really found a like their footing or audience, and I never really advertised them. That would definitely help. But so that was one kind of failed experiment, um
Mhm.
and I kind of want to do it again, Uh, but I'm a little, a little hesitant because of that first failed experiment. But it's definitely hard. For me personally, it was hard. I can't speak for other writers, but I would imagine it's hard because like readers, they read what they want to read. Like if you're a romance reader, you're just because you like one romance author, and they
Doesn't mean they
switch,
wanna read.
yeah,
Yeah,
they switch to
yeah.
like I don't know, self help or something. Like so
Yeah, it
it's
feels
tough.
like a hard right turn or left turn, doesn't it, potentially?
Yeah, and sci-fi, going from horror to sci-fi, like on paper, doesn't seem like it's that drastic, but in a way, I feel like it kind of was. Like, I mean, if you, I guess it is. So, like, you're watching The Exorcist, and then the next movie you watch is Star Wars, right? Like,
Right.
or like,
Yeah.
Guardians of the. It's definitely a different tone, and so I think like thriller. If you're a thriller author, like you're writing psychological thrillers, you're writing crime, like you write. I
Mhm.
think like there's so many subgenres within like thriller that you can pivot
Sure.
and feel fulfilled enough artistically, but also your readers won't get like a jarring like, oh my god, what is this? Why is this hairy alien shooting laser beams and
Right.
not like so I don't know. It's I think that's kind of a find out for yourself type deal if you're thinking of doing that. And uh I don't know. There's not a surefire answer to that. It's definitely difficult though, or it's not going to
As
be
you were
easy.
Right.
Sorry.
As you were saying that though, as you were saying that, Flint, I was thinking, okay, Star Wars, Exorcist. The kinda in between in my brain would be like, okay, what about Alien?
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
more
Yeah.
horror, more sci-fi, and I think maybe it's a blending of genres and
Hmm.
not going all in just one camp and saying, "I write this," and planting your flag there. Maybe it's just, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna shade in a little bit of sci-fi into this horror novel," and then you kinda have a little more freedom.
Yeah. Which so I co-wrote some books with a couple people who were like really big at the time, Michael Anderle and Martha Carr, and it was like urban fantasy stuff. And I was coming off the heels of like my first successful horror series, which was like a
Mhm.
zombie apocalypse series. And I thought that to myself. I thought, well, for one, like mostly, I'm being honest here, I did it for the paycheck, right? They told me like there was a lot of money, and so I did it. But at the same time, like I'm a big believer in if you are writing something and it feels like work, it's gonna read like work. It's gonna
Mhm.
read like you're struggling and you're not into it all the way. So,
Mhm.
and I did 4 books with them, and around like the third one, I started feeling like, oh man, I don't want to be doing
This is
this.
work.
Yeah, this is work. So I was like, you know what? I'll just throw in a little bit of what I'm good at, which is what I think I'm good at is, horror stuff. So I had like I mean, and it's like a fantasy setting. So I
Yeah.
thought it was fair game. I put in some like spider people, like who were like the villains that
Right.
they're fighting. I'm pretty sure I just called them the arachnids or something.
Okay.
And I don't think that reader base liked like that at all. Like I think I went a little too dark. I don't know.
Mhm.
So yeah. So again, it's in my
It
experience,
could have been
it's
the
been tough.
name, it could have been what they did. Yeah, it could have been
Yeah.
just yeah, that's I guess you don't really know when you're experimenting on some of those things, and
Yeah.
that's that's interesting, though, and kudos to you, though, for, stepping out, trying those different things, though. That's so important, like,
Well,
it's
well
easy to
yeah.
only just kind of play it safe and be like, "I'm just gonna do my thing right here, this is where I fit right there," and,
Well, I would be bored if I didn't do that. Like if there's only so many zombie apocalypse stories I personally have in me that I could not imagine just writing zombie novels for the rest of my life. Like I loved it. It was fun. And there's a very strong readership for zombie stuff, post-apocalyptic stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to grow as an artist, as a writer, so but thank you. Yeah, it was scary, but also at the time I wasn't overthinking like I tend to do now. Like especially like will this sell or not?
Right.
At the time it was kind of like I was just dumb enough to think that it would work and it worked. Like so I don't know if that's good advice, but that's honestly
Well,
yeah.
I mean, especially if you're talking like a trilogy, that's a pretty big commitment. I don't
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
I don't think that's bad advice there, Flint, because if you're talking a trilogy, that's not just one book, that's 3.
Yeah, it's
So,
true, yeah.
you know, or more potentially if you're going for the series. Now, you mentioned earlier that you are kind of like, okay, inspiration strikes, go,
Yeah.
strike while the iron is hot.
Mhm.
I know that does it like always end up being a novel, or does it like you write it 10,000 words and you're just like not digging this. I'm just going to put this on the back burner
Oh,
and maybe I'll come back to it.
that happens more than you know. Like, yeah, really. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That happens. Definitely does. Yeah, if especially lately, I've been starting stuff and then kind of like losing steam or losing
Mhm.
inspiration, I guess. But then going back to it and finishing it just because it's like in my head, I need to get it out, like kind of
Right.
thing. And that's the current book I have with my editor is one of those books. It was started as like an attempt at switching genres, but not too far. I was going to try
Mhm.
like psychological thriller because some of those are really dark, man. Like
Yeah.
the stuff that
Oh yeah.
like there's no like monsters
Crazy.
and ghosts and stuff, but some of the stuff is
Worse.
I would call it horror. Yeah, like some of it's
Yeah.
worse than more graphic than when I write. So
Yeah.
I started writing that and I wrote the whole thing. It was like 55,000 words or whatever. And then
Yeah.
I read it and I hated it. And then I was like, you know what? I had that got to get it out of my head thing. So I
Mhm.
started over from a different perspective. So I originally wrote it third person past tense, and then I
Mhm.
started over first person present because
Mhm.
that's very common from my observations in psychological thrillers, the first person present tense narrator. And it started working, and then like I don't know, probably around 15,000 words, I gave up, and then I did The Cabin of Nowhere. I wrote that.
Mhm.
That was like, I didn't struggle with that one. And then I came back to the one that I abandoned and finished it, but I reworked the original one in third person, and I kept scenes, but I just changed the writing, I guess, like to
Mhm.
be first person. And so that I like Frankensteined it. I Frankenstein the story
Yeah, I
basically.
totally
Yeah,
get that.
and it worked. Like, well, so far in my opinion, we'll see what my editor says, but
Right.
yeah, I've gone through it a few times and it worked. I've gone through it twice, and then she's gonna go through it, and then I'll go through it a few more times, and then I'll have like a proofreader and beta
Oh
readers.
yeah.
But I think,
Yeah.
in my opinion, it worked, but only because I didn't go full psychological thriller. I put in some supernatural aspects.
Brought it back.
Yeah,
You reeled it in.
yes. You're right. I'm figuring stuff out. You're right. And uh yeah, so it's not like overt supernatural, but it's like, is it supernatural or is it
Little
not?
questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so
X-Files.
because of that, I wouldn't market it as psychological thriller because I feel like that would make a lot of true psychological thriller readers mad. You know, I don't want a bunch of 1-star reviews.
Nobody wants that. Nobody
Exactly. Yeah.
wants that. Forget
So
that.
so yeah, I don't even remember what the question was. But
No, you're fine. You're good. I was asking about initially, like, get into a book, lose steam, put it aside, come back to it later. So no, your answer was great. Uh, let's talk for a minute about kind of the editing. You've said it before. I know you kind of hit on it. You're like, yeah, editing, not my favorite. That's the hardest part.
It is.
And you also said you are an overthinker, and I'm completely in this ballpark as well. And I think it's pretty universally common. What does it look like now for you? Mr. 35 books in.
What
What's
does that?
editing look like now?
Well, I think writing a bunch of books has helped the process, right? Like the first book I finished and did the whole process with, way back in 2016 or 17, whatever it was.
Wow.
Um, that was hard. Like, and you learn a lot and you adapt as you go, especially in this business. Like, and the great thing with KDP and Amazon is you can push a change same
Fix
day
it.
or
Yeah.
24 hours for the print edition. Audio is different. I haven't done that. I haven't had any changes to audio, but I'm sure there probably is. Like,
I'm sure.
yeah, because like with the audio, I'd give them the company the manuscript, and they would do it. Blah blah blah, all that. But
Right.
so from the first time I did editing, it was a mess, and then now to today, I have more of like a streamlined process. First of all, I write my first drafts aren't bad. Like they're not like because like if I'm really not feeling it and the story it's not making sense, I usually give up and I'll come back to it
Right.
or I'll
Right.
just give up or like it'll just sit on my hard drive and languish for who knows how long. But so yeah, so I do write pretty cleanly story wise and to an extent, writing wise, style wise, not that many typos and stuff that needs fixed. And so I finish the first draft and then I wait as long as I can, uh, which isn't long because I'll start like itching, like gotta get to
I know.
this. Yeah, so
Yeah, I
maybe
know the
like
NHL too well.
2 weeks maybe is probably the average now, but I used to wait longer because I was always like writing something else, but now it's not like that anymore because family life and all that. And
Mhm.
so yeah, 2 weeks, and then I'll read through it, and I do like the revision mode on Scrivener or track changes
Yeah.
on Word,
Right.
and so that way I can see like what I changed when I do this read through, and then I go back and I don't read through the whole book again. I just read through the colored sections that
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Nice.
because I feel like because those are like first drafts, mini first drafts within the second draft, and
Yep.
then I send it to an editor, and she's usually pretty quick on the turnaround, but the last two books have been like two more like I've been waiting 2 weeks to get them back. And then I go through that again, not like with a magnifying glass, because it's more like just addressing what she pointed out, like notes or any like big changes. And then I go through it again after I have addressed those changes. And I usually like this has really helped me. I listen to it out loud. I listen to the whole book
Mm.
out loud. It's just because like typos, they slip through. Like you can look at
They
a
do.
book a
Your eyes
million
miss
times.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hearing it out loud definitely helps catch those typos.
Mhm.
And so after I'm done listening to it out loud, that's pretty close to the final product. But then I send it to one of two proofreaders, whoever's available at the time, and then I make those changes. That's like through Google Drive or whatever, Google Docs, whatever. And
Yeah.
I have like a master manuscript that I'm go back to and make those
Right.
changes, and then we do all the formatting, and then we upload.
Nice. Nice. Not as painful as it could be.
No, yeah, no, like the way you go through your stuff with the note cards and the
Oh
puzzle
my.
pieces, I can't. I just can't. I don't know. But hey, that's
It's
what works for somebody doesn't work for everybody. That's writing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. because I'm pretty in my mind, honestly, Flint, nothing's officially set in stone until I'm like, okay, this actually really works.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is then you're ready to move stuff. Like, okay, let's move it around.
Yeah.
And that's, some apps honestly promote that. I mean, Scrivener kind of
Hmm.
promotes the
Yeah.
moving around, um, but you're right. And especially though on the more books you write, the cleaner it's gonna get, the
Yeah.
more you're going to streamline the whole process. And I know it's like we knew this, but we kinda need to repeat it out loud and
Hmm.
remind ourselves because as you're writing a big story, a novel is not like it's not like writing a little 5,000 word short story. We're talking, over 50K plus, or it's not really in that novel range.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, it's a skill. It's like any other skill. The more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. I mean, there's definitely, I do think that there's talent involved, but I don't think you have to be extremely, talented to write a book. Or I don't know. It's like, I mean, because it's my job, so I look at it as like a job, I guess. Like you, you got to
I
show
think
up and do
I
it.
get you. I get you. I think too, though, until you actually do it, the question in our minds, the first time you're writing, can I finish this thing?
Yeah,
Is a common question, especially can I write a novel, period. It's
yeah,
but you mentioned too, writing has changed and evolved for you with having younger kids, having a family. How do you handle some of the challenges that come with that? I mean, I know I will throw you I know one of your normal defaults is working at night. Is that a big one for you?
um, yeah. Uh, Not as late as I don't work as late as I used to. I used to work like used to be up till well, it was when the kids napped. They don't nap anymore because when they napped, I would nap. They
Yeah.
don't nap anymore. They gave up the naps. So I would but when they napped, I would stay up till like 3 a.m., 4 a.m.
Wow.
and
Wow.
we'd all get up at 9 a.m. and then they'd have a nap at 1 p.m. and I'd get like so it was not healthy. I don't suggest it, but it worked. Um, and now it's so now it's like maybe I'm working 7 to 11, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., maybe midnight if I'm really feeling it. And then I go to bed because I can't stay up late anymore. I would love to, but I can't.
Weekends look a little different for you.
Yes, weekends can be great and sometimes they can be like nothing, like
You're
because we're
doing stuff with
busy. Yeah,
family.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's
But
a little hit and miss there. But typically the 7 to 11 is kind of your work day, if you will.
yeah, 7 to 11, 7 to midnight. When I'm in the trenches of a novel like first draft, that could maybe I'll start earlier and I'll start earlier or I'll stay later. So it just depends, really. I mean, I do it when I can, and you know, do a
Yeah.
lot of it when I can.
Yeah. Now, what are some of your favorites growing up? Like your favorite stories you're like, "Wow, you know what? Reading this one kinda changed how I like, how I view stories." Like, really started the ball rolling for you?
Ooh, that's
It's
so.
probably Stephen King, I'll give you that, right?
No, I really no. Well,
No?
yeah, yes and no. Well, Stephen King, I didn't start reading his books till I was maybe 19, 20.
Okay.
But I was exposed to Stephen King unknowingly through his millions of adaptations. Like, I remember I was maybe 5, 6,
5.
and I
5.
and my babysitters at the time were not very strict, or I mean, they're just teenagers, and they were like cousins, kind of. They're like my half sister's cousins, so they were my cousins, I guess. And they put on the 1990 It miniseries with Tim Curry, and
Yep.
like that was traumatic. But at the
Grade
same time,
5, I would think.
it was exhilarating. Like I was like,
Okay.
I want to feel like this again. I need to watch more stuff like this. And my mom, of course, was like, no. But then as I got older, my mom got, more lenient, like I remember I wrote about this in the end at the end of The Cabin of Nowhere, like how the book came to be.
Mhm.
I have this memory of, I don't know, it was maybe 11, 12. My uncle would visit every summer, and my birthday's in the summer, and he's like some, you know, tech guy from San Francisco. So he's pretty loaded, or was back then. I don't know. And he would give me $100 for my birthday. And like
Yeah.
that is to a 12-year-old,
Oh,
that,
that's $1,000,000. Yeah.
yeah. So like the first thing I bought was uh like the complete VHS set of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Oh my
And
gosh, there's a bunch of those.
yeah, so the set was really cool because on the spines of the tapes was like a,
Mhm.
a sliver of Freddy, and it was like him with like the really long arms, like from, I don't know if you've seen it in the first one where he's like walking down the alleyway with the
Yeah.
long arm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I tried to sneak it past my grandma because I knew they wouldn't it was like they wouldn't sell it to me. But my grandma was like, my grandma, she's awesome. She's very like, oh my God, we gotta watch one of these right when we get home. And I was like, what? And I did, And so that, yeah, for
That's
horror,
great.
it was, Goosebumps, Are You Afraid
Yeah.
of the Dark, Stephen King, even though I didn't know, like
Yeah.
I remember seeing The Shining when I was too young too, with the same babysitters, because I remember the girl or the old lady, the old woman in the
Yes, that's
bathtub.
traumatic there for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah. I think I was a little older when I saw that, but not by much. And so so for horror, it was that stuff. But um, I read when I was a kid, but not like I wasn't like a bookworm. I was probably more into basketball than I was
I
books.
get that.
But as I got older, I started reading more. And I remember we went on vacation to Myrtle Beach, and we went into like some bookstore, and I saw The Hobbit, and I think I was like 14 or
Okay.
something. And I read The Hobbit on the beach. And man, I was like, and I had seen the Lord of the Rings movies, but I wasn't like super into them or anything. Not like
Mhm.
Star Wars, right? And
Right.
I read The Hobbit like in, I don't know, it's not a very long book, but I read it over the two days we were at the beach before we went to like visit family or whatever. I don't remember. It's a
Right.
long time ago. And I was just like, whoa, this is awesome. So naturally I was like, I need to read more of this world. So
Okay.
then I read The Lord of the Rings, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, I need to read more like this. And I ended up at Harry Potter. And man, those books, like, woo, those books are awesome in my opinion. Like I just blazed through, I don't know how many pages, and I read the whole series in like a month, which is super fast
Wow.
for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Harry Potter, The Hobbit. I like the Lord of the Rings, but I like The Hobbit better, just because that nostalgia, I guess, or like that
Yeah.
first love. So
Yeah, yeah, especially having it on the beach makes it even more scenic and memorable, and like
yeah,
you found this treasure. Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, like we're in the Misty Mountains in the book, but then I look up and I see like the ocean and stuff. So it's like
Right.
a cool
Yeah. Makes it
contrast.
an experience, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool.
And so there are those, and then as I get older, I branched out and read more stuff. I remember reading Fight Club. That was a pretty big one for me. I was, I think, a freshman in college, and I was like, damn, I need to
Yeah.
I need to be like these people. And then at the same time, I was like, I shouldn't be like these people, but they're cool. So, and that was a big that book,
You went
especially.
literal. I was just thinking the writing, but
Yeah,
okay.
no, no, that's what I was getting. That's what I was getting to. That book's writing
Yeah.
was very. It was like it was unlike anything I had read up to that point. Like I had never read a style like that, and I loved it. And I naturally, as a writer, like we like consciously and unconsciously copy, right?
Oh yeah,
Or, we pick up. And
for
so
sure.
the first short story I had published on like a literary magazine, no money or anything,
Mhm.
Didn't get paid, just contributor whatever copies.
Yep.
Um, I wrote that very much like Fight Club was written, like that,
Mhm.
like transgressive kind of voice, and it worked.
Yes.
So then when I started writing novels, I did the same
Same
with
voice.
same
I'm sure.
voice for
Yeah.
the zombie stuff. That like that's an eight book series, but
Yeah.
that first one, that was like the first book that I published that was making money, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. So I should keep writing like this. And
That's cool.
I
That's
did
cool.
8 books in that series, and then uh, I've grown out of that, but I still appreciate it. Like I think Chuck P is a hell of a writer and
I
cool dude.
I've learned so much from him.
Yeah,
So much. And I know I share a lot of stuff with you from him because I think he really like cut like the movie and the book. It was just at the right time.
yeah,
And it was so different. And it's funny because some of his stuff, like Survivor, Chuck Palahniuk's book, The Survivor, he put all the page numbers in the wrong order,
yeah,
and it's like a countdown. And I'm
yeah.
like, things like that really excite me. And those fun little things, like I know in one of his books you have to hold it up to a mirror,
Oh,
and I
really?
like to read it. Yeah, and I'm
Is
like,
it? Oh, it's Invisible Monsters, isn't it?
Invisible Monsters, yeah,
Or
and you
like
have to
the
like hold
read.
it up to a mirror to read
Yeah,
it.
I haven't read
And
that one.
I haven't either. I listened to part of the audiobook, and then I think I ended up going just to another chapter on that book is what I did, but, um, it was pretty huge. Now, back to you. You've said you've read almost all of King's books, right? All of Stephen King's books,
Well, I
right?
have like
Except
a
for, like, a
running.
couple?
No, I still have like 30 left. Like
30
I mean, I have an exhaustive list. Like I have it divided into like
categories.
yeah, I have like okay, well, first of all, I have everything that he wrote while he was not sober. That's one
Mm,
category, and then everything that's sober, which is from like the dark half in 1989 to today. But then he also did the pen name stuff. That's another category. All the
mhm.
collections. I've only read 4 of his collections, and he has
Short
13.
stories.
Yeah, the short story novella
Interesting.
collections. And
Okay.
he has a lot of nonfiction on writing, staple in every writer's journey, right? And then he has some collaborations, and I've only read one of those. So yeah, I have quite a few. So his main novels though, like just him, not pen name, not co-authored, I'm probably at, I would say 75% done with those. So yeah, there's still a lot left, and I'm like not in a rush because he's
Savoring it, right?
yeah, kind of yeah,
Enjoying it.
yeah.
What have you learned most from King?
Oh man,
I said
that's
I
a tough.
wouldn't give you any tough stumping questions, and I just gave you the monster. Just what comes to mind, like like
When I
obviously.
think of him, I think of character development and how he can
Mm,
take some. I mean, well, okay, well, for one example, which I didn't love this book, but Cujo.
mhm,
I think most people know the story of Cujo about the dog
yep,
getting rabies. The I've never seen the movie, but the book, a lot of not I don't know if it's a lot, but there's a few viewpoint chapters from Cujo's
from
perspective.
the dog's perspective.
Yes, and it's sad, man. Like, because
Oh,
he knows something's wrong with him, and he
mhm.
just like the way it's written is like he just wants to be a good boy. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like
That cuts hard. That's like
yeah,
that hits.
and just so like the fact he could just go from a mom going through a like kind of an affair, having an affair, but they also have a kid
With
to
night
like a
terrors,
dog.
right? Isn't there night terrors in this too?
I know the opening chat. It's been a while. The opening chapter is like the little boy having like he sees something in the closet, and the
Yeah,
parents come in and they're like, oh, don't worry, it's nothing, it's just some
yeah.
clothes or whatever. But it is actually something in the book, at least.
my gosh.
because it's like, yeah, it's like a evil entity that passed
Mhm.
from another character in another book. Because like they all take place. These books take place in Castle Rock. Not all of his books take place in Castle Rock, but there's like quite a few
Mhm.
Castle Rock novels. And Cujo and the Dead Zone take place in Castle Rock. And the Dead Zone was first, and then the evil entity jumped from that character to Cujo. I don't know. I don't know how the movie did it, but that's how it was in the book, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, so with King, it's character development. Also, like, I mean, the guy's kind of a badass. Like, he does what he wants, and he has
True.
been doing what he wants for a
All
while. Like,
along, all
it's
along.
like now you could say, like, oh yeah, of course he could, write a crime novel
Right.
because he's Stephen King. Everyone's gonna read it. But like, he was
No,
like
not back
from
in the day.
yeah, like his first novel was Carrie, which is
Yep.
so like as a 30-year-old,
Not
a
not
man
what
in
you'd
his
expect.
30s, you wouldn't
Not what
expect
you
them
expect.
to. Yeah, exactly.
No.
I think he was like 27 when he published that, and
And
then
then his wife salvaged it from the trash,
yeah,
that
yeah,
story.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And then he goes on from Carrie to write Salem's Lot, which is a vampire novel, and then I think The Shining came next. So like he's kind of like getting put into a box as like a horror author, right? And then he just writes like a 1,000-word novel about a killer flu epidemic or what.
1,000 page, you mean The Stand?
Oh yeah, 1,000-page. Yeah, yeah, The Stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
so. Which in The Stand's not scary. I don't think The Stand's scary at all. Like so. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like the boldness, and then like he has the Dark Tower series, which a lot of people say is like one of the best fantasy series ever, and is from the guy who wrote Cujo and It, and that's just crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just a writer's writer, and he's just a writer, I guess. It's the best way I can
Yeah.
put it.
Well, I think one thing, like, I love watching King interviews. That's one of my favorite things. It's like
Yeah, he's a
certain
cool dude.
authors, I just love to watch them because talk about straight shooter. I mean, he's usually there with a black t-shirt on, like an AC/DC t-shirt on and jeans, and he's just like, "Hey, what's up? Let's
Yeah,
talk." And
yeah,
I'm
he's
just
a
like
cool
I'm
dude.
like, he I think he really wants to play guitar, which I respect, and he's like,
He's in a band, or he was. They were him
I
and a
know,
couple of author friends were in a
right?
band or something. I
Right.
don't know if he's any good, but
I
he writes about guitar a lot. He does so.
he can't be too bad at this point of
Yeah,
just being around all that, playing in bands that long. But
yeah.
uh so any parting words for other writers, other story builders? You've been in it now writing many, many novels. You've seen a lot of the changes. What would you tell other writers that, they're writing novels or working on stories? Any words of wisdom?
I don't have anything that is, new or original, but it's tried and true, and it's, just do it, write it, finish it. If it sucks, it sucks, but you're gonna you can't get any better without sucking. You gotta suck first.
That's true.
I mean, that's the way
That's
I
so
did it.
true.
You gotta. I don't want to say like lower expectations, but in a way, yeah,
Mhm.
kind of like just you're
Mhm.
not gonna. Okay, most people are not gonna come right out of the gate and write like a best-selling, world-changing, great American novel. You gotta just follow your heart, like in a
I love
way.
it.
Yeah,
I
like
love it.
I
No,
mean,
that's true. Totally true.
yeah, I mean, pay attention to what's selling and what's popular, but don't feel like you have to do exactly that. And like I sent you that video, like all the fantasy novels have like
The
a
same
blank
names,
a
same
blank of
idea.
blank
Yeah.
title. Yeah, it's just like I get it, but like art like writing is an art. Artistically, you have to f- follow your heart, I guess.
I love
Right?
it. I love
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
I feel like we need some Celine Dion just to
yeah,
wrap up
a
this
little cliche,
episode.
but mean,
No, I mean, what you're saying though is totally legit. Follow your heart, follow your gut. You know what's true. You know what you really want to do.
yeah,
So
and just pay attention, like stuff, like not just to the market, but stories. You're watching a movie, try to not don't get a note. You don't have to get a notepad out and be like, oh, this is
you don't?
yeah, right, yeah. Just keep it in the back of your mind,
Right.
and if you really like it, which I do this sometimes. Like I really got obsessed with Donnie Darko. Do you remember that?
You
Like I
did. You were
watched it
extreme.
I watched it and I really liked it, but in the back of my mind, I was kind of like dissecting it story wise, and I liked it so much. I was like, I'm gonna watch it again, and I'm really gonna try to pay attention to
Mhm.
what works and what doesn't work. So you could do that, and I mean, if you want, not giving
But
you
that
any
wasn't
orders here.
forced. That was being a geek, like nerding out on it,
Yeah, a
having
little
fun
bit.
and enjoying it. It
Yeah,
wasn't forced. You're like, "Ooh, I can learn more."
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not like it wasn't homework. It was like, "Ooh, I wanna do this. This sounds fun."
yeah,
Again, you're following your heart, so
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, because like for me personally, if it feels like work, it's gonna read. It's gonna read poorly.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being with me, Flint. How can people get in touch with you? Obviously, all your books are on Amazon.
Yeah.
Um,
I have a website, flintmaxwell.com, that has links to my author page and some direct links to the whatever book is current. And I have a Facebook page. I don't know how you. It's is there if there's an @ on there, it's Flint Maxwell Books on the Facebook page. I also have Instagram, same thing, Flint Maxwell Books. I have an email, so I think that's available on my website. There's like a contact me thing. So if you wanted to
mhm.
ask me questions or whatever, I reply to everybody. I'm not super busy, so unless you're rude, don't be rude. And but also Facebook. I'm most active on Facebook with my readers and followers. So Facebook, Instagram, website, yeah. Phone
Right,
number. No, I'm
right.
just kidding.
Oh, well, thanks again for being on the Story Builder show. It's such a delight. Thank you so much for all you're doing, Flint.
Thank you for
You
having
bet.
me. It was fun.